Hey everyone, and welcome to Prune Belly Insiders. I'm your host, Michael Adams. Before I introduce our guest, I want to apologize for the beeping in the background. I'm currently in the hospital with a blood infection, but without further ado, let me introduce our guest, Michelle Morse.
Hi, everybody.
So, Michelle, what prompted you to go into hospice?
For me, I think I spent many years as a home health aide, and I was very fortunate to work with some families that ended up turning into end of life situations. Um, and working with the nurses through that time frame, working with the families and learning the experience, I felt like it was a very underutilized um, area of medicine, and it just I felt very comfortable with the process, and I was very curious about it to learn more.
So, you started as a home health aide. What made you go into nursing?
Well, I think I always wanted to be a nurse even as a young kid. But it's one of those cases where life happened while I was planning for something else, so I did things a little bit backwards. But I eventually got to nursing after a divorce, raising my kids and all of those fun things. um So I came to nursing with definitely a different mindset. I think as someone older getting into nursing, we bring all of our life experience to the nursing. So hopefully I've figured out a pretty good niche for myself.
How hard was going through nursing school while raising children?
Luckily, they weren't little kids. My daughter at the time was 17, and my son was 11. But there was a lot of juggling with their dad schedules, sports, and those kind of things. It's something that if I knew how difficult it was going to be on me and on them, I might not have done it. But I'm glad that they understood why I was doing it, and we all managed. I mean, there were plenty of times my bank account was overdrawn. I went hungry to make sure that they continued to eat. Um, but like I said, we all pulled together, and now, oh gosh, one's a teacher, one is finishing up her psychology master's, and my youngest is still figuring things out, but he's working and figuring out life. I couldn't ask for better.
That's good. So, what would you say is your favorite part of hospice?
For me, I think is making the connections and the education. It really is figuring out how to meet the family where they are, to understand whatever disease process is in front of them. It comes down to not telling them what needs to be done, but giving them the tools to adjust to whatever comes along.
All right, and what's your least favorite part of hospice?
Probably the families for the same reason, because sometimes they listen and they accept, and sometimes denial is a very, very strong emotion. And also there's a lot of, I think my biggest problem is when we have families that see the symptoms but don't necessarily want to medicate because of those symptoms. So that's a struggle for me when I see them holding back on medications and the patient's not comfortable. That's a real struggle for me.
So, without breaking hip, are you able to give me an example of that?
I actually have one currently right now without using names. But I have a patient, she's in her 90s. She is on service for dementia. She falls on that fast rating scale, which is the level of dementia. She comes in at a 7C, which means that she's basically total care. She's able to sit up and hold herself upright, but she has no ambulatory skills left anymore. She can't stand, she can't transfer herself. Um, she's what I call pleasantly confused. She's kind of alert and oriented to her surroundings, but not much more. But she has a lot of anxiety issues, and I think there's also a level of um, unverbalized pain because she's not able to express what she's feeling, but it does come out in her symptoms. When our home health aide is there providing care, she's very tense when we try to move her and roll her. Her respiratory rate goes from normal up into the 30s. She becomes very combative when we try to move her around because one, she's either afraid of falling and can't express it, or it hurts when we're trying to move her and roll her. And the family is like, oh no, that's just her. She's that way all the time. They give her Tylenol.
Uh,
Frustrating for me because Tylenol's not going to improve a respiratory rate of 36 or 40.
yeah. So, how do you leave hospice behind when you go home? Like, how do you separate the nurse part of you of hospice and the family side of you?
I probably don't. I think for me, I really do carry what I do all day with me. My kids understand that. They know if they need me for anything, mom's there, mom's in, but I really do carry all of those experiences with me and hopefully learn from them every day so I can continue to help people as I go. Um, we've also talked about the other person that I take care of in my life, my boyfriend. So again, the nursing doesn't quite necessarily stop as I'm sitting in his dialysis room. There's our machine. So I literally go from helping patients and families understanding end of life to coming home and helping him with his dialysis so he doesn't become one of our patients.
All right. And what would you say you do as a hospice nurse? Because I know that you do the regular nursing stuff, but you also do admissions and GIP. So, in your own words, what do you do as a hospice nurse?
My role is what's called a case manager. So, yes, I do admissions and I help evaluate people as to whether or not they're eligible for our services, meet certain requirements under disease processes. But as a case manager, I'm responsible for updating our plan of care to make sure it's appropriate for the patient needs, monitoring medications, uses, appropriateness. If there is an outside primary care doctor, it's my responsibility to update them and include them in any changes that we're trying to make to guide the plan of care. A lot of it is education and support. It's not just me going in, oh, here's your blood pressure, here's your heart rate for the day, bye, see you next week. You and I know that even with some of our visits over time, we're talking of, we could be talking an hour and a half about what is happening, what's expected as far as disease process, what's not normal for a disease process, and how we kind of balance the two to figure out what each patient needs.
Yeah. And what are some of the conditions or diseases you see on hospice?
I think most frequently I see dementia is a big one. We see a lot of end stage heart failure and a lot of end stage COPD are probably some of the most prevalent.
All right. And what are some of your goals for the future other than retiring?
Well, that'll probably still be a long way off. Um, I have a couple of my colleagues that ask me if I'm interested in doing positions in the office and things like that. Right now, I am at the point where I will continue moving my patients' bodies as long as my body lets me. Education wise, if I really had the time to dedicate to go back to school, I would love to do my next step up in my degree. But also, that's one of those things that at my age, it's like, do I want to take on the financial burden of the additional degree if it's not going to change my income level? So it's
Yeah.
it's a tough balance. But I'm also the type of person that I love the learning process. I'm always trying to figure out, what does this symptom mean? How does it relate to something? What does this med do? So I'm still very learning oriented, even though I'm not actually still, going back to school.
All right. And in hospice, do you ever come by any rare diseases?
Every once in a while, we see something that we're not quite sure what to do with. We don't see a lot of ALS patients. It's not terribly uncommon, but for hospice patients, it's a difficult one to manage. because of the breathing and the respiratory issues. Some of the treatments that they do normally don't necessarily fall in line with hospice services. So sometimes getting certain patients qualified for hospice is a little bit of a gray area. As far as, again, prune belly, for example, you are probably my first and probably will be my only.
So I'm trying to think here. S- Hmm.
I got you
How,
confused. Hey.
a little bit. So how old were you when you started the nursing program?
Oh gosh. Let me see. Gonna make me do math. That's not my strong suit. At least not anymore. I actually started the nursing clinicals. I think that was 2015. I was accepted to the first round of nursing clinicals in school. So that was 24. Oh my goodness. We're going back 9 years. So I was 44 when I started nursing school.
All right.
I,
Now,
I was older than my clinical instructors.
now I know you watched Chris's interview, and this is kind of the same question I asked him, but normally in the medical field, you shouldn't build relationships with your patients. So how do you avoid building relationships when you're that close to end of life?
You can't. Straight up, you can't. If you don't make some kind of a connection with the patient or the family, it makes it very difficult to if they don't feel like, and it's not necessarily the connection for me. For I feel that that connection is more important for the patients and the families. If they don't feel in some way connected to me, to trust me to do what's best for them, it's never going to work, and I'm not the right case manager for them.
All right. And you said colleagues have asked you about going in the office and stuff like that. Is that something you're interested in?
Eventually, because I think in an office role, one, I can still have input on our caseloads in the field, but I can do it in a way of supporting the field staff and helping to improve our training methods, our communication methods, our documentation methods, um, and really just create hopefully a better atmosphere for teamwork within what we do.
All right. And we've been talking for a while, and you've talked about eventually going into the hospital to educate other nurses and possibly other doctors about hospice. So if it came down to if you had to choose between doing that or going into the actual office, which one would you prefer?
I think right now I would really love the challenge of educating at the hospital. I think that to me is probably where I feel like I might be able to do the most good. When I'm in and out of the hospital, it's because, like I said, the doctors are amazing. I am not there in any way, shape, or form to say they don't know what they're doing. But end of life truly becomes a completely different specialty. And the one thing that I learned going through nursing school at my age and going to where I am now, end of life isn't taught. It's not taught to the doctors, it's not taught to nurses. In the 20,000 page textbook that I was learning from, palliative care and end of life was 2 pages. That's it.
Wow.
So I really feel it's something that we need. And it's not like, the saddest part is, and it's not like any of us are ever going to escape death. We're all going to die. So figuring out how to do it comfortably, I think, is important.
Yeah, that's a very good remark. So, how would you explain hospice philosophy?
Comfort. It comes down to figuring out what we can control, what we can't, and what we can manage appropriately.
All right. And have you ever had a patient you didn't get along with, or you thought maybe for some reason you just butted heads with?
Yeah, there's been a few. I am not everybody's cup of tea. I am loud. I am, I don't carry the cloud of gloom and doom. And some families are not open to the fact that yes, they're dealing with an awful situation, but guess what? You're still allowed to have moments of joy. And
Yeah.
that's something that I try to help my families with, that yes, we're struggling with maybe symptom management, we're struggling with trying to understand what their bodies are doing, but that doesn't mean that those little glimmers of hope and those moments of joy aren't going to be there, and it doesn't mean you need to feel guilty for having them.
All right. Now, without naming names, what was your favorite case you've dealt with over the years on hospice?
Oh gosh, that's a tough one. um oh, considering now will be almost 6 years of hospice, I've probably dealt with, I'm guessing, upwards of 300 patients at least, somewhere
Wow.
along. Um, probably one of my favorites, and it was a tough one. She was a dementia patient in one of the facilities where I managed. She had developmental delays and then developed the dementia as she got older. She was just, I mean, tiny little contracted body. The dementia was just taking over. But on a good day with her, she was probably like an 8-year-old child. And again, for her to find joy when we would visit, she loved watching Peppa Pig. We would put Peppa Pig on. We would make animal noises. I just anything to just get her to laugh so we could move her and turn her without pain and discomfort. Yeah, that one for me was probably one of my favorites when I was finally able to make that connection with her, and I could see her begin to trust me to touch her and not hurt her.
That's
Um,
amazing.
it like I said, I don't think you get that from any other field of medicine for us to be able to make those kind of connections. And if there's a nurse doing this job that makes those connections and doesn't carry that with them, I don't know how they do it.
All right. Now, getting a little bit on the political side here, would you say hospice is underfunded?
No, it's probably one of the smartest thing that our government has done. Under Medicare and Medicaid, hospice is completely paid for. Everything that's related to that patient's diagnosis that we are managing is paid for. The durable medical equipment is paid for. The medications that are all appropriate are paid for. I can't say, like I said, I don't know what reimbursements are done for the companies that are involved, but from my point of view, knowing that that's a burden that many of our families don't have to deal with, because we're able to tell them, you don't have to worry about your meds. We're going to take care of it, and we're going to send them to you by FedEx so you don't have to go get them.
All right. So I'm waiving HIPAA here for you. All right. How difficult am I as a patient?
Honestly, you're not.
Ooh.
Um, no, I don't think it's not that you're not a difficult patient. It's a difficult situation, but you're not a difficult patient. Um, and the difference is, I think, for a lot of us that do hospice, we accept what's happening with our patients because of advanced age or certain disease process and history. And the phrase that I use with you all the time is muddy water,
Yep.
because you're young. I don't want to see you go through that end of life process. You have some of the most amazing goals and experiences to share with people. So yeah, it's one of those cases where I still have to look at everything we do through that hospice lens. What's appropriate treatment versus what's not appropriate treatment under hospice, but I'm also going to try to be your biggest advocate to help you figure out what you can do to live life to the fullest with whatever it gives you.
Thank you. That's amazing. So, what would you say is the hardest part of losing a patient?
Oh, sometimes it goes by how long they've been on service. Um, because that's when you really tend to get connected to
Yeah.
them. Um, One patient in particular that I really struggled with her loss was one of my cancer patients. She had lung cancer. It was a very, very slow progressing disease. And I think she came to service very early in those stages. There were several times where she probably should have been discharged from service for extended prognosis. Overall, I ended up being involved with her for 4 years. How can you not develop a relationship, a friendship, and things like that in that span of time?
Yeah.
But when her life finally started to really unwind, her decline was real. She was very hesitant to use the morphine for comfort. And it was probably one of her last couple of days. She was still refusing to let her daughters medicate her, even though she was very uncomfortable. She was starting to lose some consciousness here and there. She could still kind of look at you and make eye contact. The one day, and I literally, she was so uncomfortable, I could not bear to leave her that way. I literally got in bed with her and laid with her, and I said, honey, I can't leave here until you let me medicate you. You can come back and haunt me for medicating you if you want to, but I need to make sure you are comfortable right now. And she looked at me a little kind of side eyed. She had one little tear, and then she shook her head yes. She let me give her the morphine. Her breathing relaxed. And I think that was probably about maybe right before her last 48 hours.
Wow. So, if you said you wanted to be a nurse since you were a kid, why didn't you go into nursing from the beginning?
Well, life happens. um, I call the years of 18 to 24 my lobotomy years because somebody else had my brain and it was not me. Um, but like I said, I had been accepted to several colleges right out of high school. But like I said, there was some family drama here and there going on. I ended up going to the Penn State local campus. And like I said, I just really ended up making some really poor decisions for myself at that point. I didn't go to where I thought I wanted to go there. And yeah, no, I was just basically a stupid kid.
Sounds like a lot of kids.
It happens. But you know what? I don't regret it because I got through that part of my life. I was able to get married. I was a stay at home mom. I had so many other opportunities because of some really stupid choices. But it also gave me the experience, I think, to be able to do what I do now.
That's amazing. So, hmm, what would you say is the hardest part of dealing with management at hospice?
Um, Sometimes it just comes down to communication and scheduling. I think that sometimes I think our management in particular forgets what it's like to be out in the field. But at the same time, we don't always know what they're going through in the office.
Yeah,
So I try to be mindful of that, but I also know my filter doesn't always work the best. My office staff is well aware that my filter doesn't work all the time. I'm very grateful that they take me as I am. Um, and they know that my heart is in the right place for my patients and for the service we provide.
all right. So, if you could go back and change one thing about either becoming a nurse or your life in general, what would it be?
Oh, that's a tough one because I try not to have regrets because they don't get you anywhere. But honestly, my one regret is probably not doing nursing school sooner. Um, at the time I got started back into school, I kind of did it on the sly. I was still married at the time. He did not agree with the idea of me going back to school, so I kind of did it anyway. I was 11 weeks into a 15-week semester taking 2 classes before he figured out that I was going to school. And yeah, it just kind of progressively got worse from there. But like I said, if anything, it would have been, I probably would have just changed some things in that relationship a little bit sooner to get to where I am. But other than that, honestly, I don't think I would really want to go back and change a whole lot. My kids are, like I said, I really feel lucky with my kids for everything that we've been through, for them to be the human beings that they are, for me to be in the job that I'm doing and feel like I'm in the right place. If I went back and changed even one single little piece, it might change the entire outcome.
Yeah. So how did you get through most of a semester without your husband knowing you were going to college?
Well, I said at the time I was a stay-at-home mom and he was working full time. Um, the kids were in school, so I took a couple of day classes. Um, the local campus, instead of putting my parking sticker on the windshield of my truck, the security office gave me one of the little hanging placards that you would use for like a handicap sticker.
Oh,
So I'd drive to school, I'd put my parking sticker on, go to class, go home, take the parking sticker down, tuck it in the glove compartment. Nobody knew.
wow, that's amazing. So, hmm. Sorry, I'm just trying to think. I'm not used to doing it on the fly like this. So, what would you say is your best memory with hospice?
Oh, actually, I just got a good one this week. Wednesday during our IDG meeting, I was actually voted for the last quarter of 2023. I was voted our office hero of the quarter.
Wow, that's amazing. And I'm honestly not surprised because you obviously seem like a great mother and you're absolutely an amazing nurse.
Thank you. Coming from you, that is a tremendous compliment.
Hmm. So, what's your least favorite memory with hospice?
Ooh, probably a few of the nurses I've tried to train along the way. Um, I'm not an easy person to train with. I'm demanding. I'm harsh. Um, but it comes down to, you spoon feed them for so long and then you try to let them fly, and then you kind of have to pull back, correct, pull back, guide. And after they reach a certain point where I'm not seeing connections when they're in visits, not seeing them develop routines to help them get through the visits, it's that for me is it, that's a struggle for me. Then it's like, okay, I have to tell them, okay, my biggest question for them is, why hospice? If they give me some heartfelt connection why they're coming to hospice, those are the ones that usually make it. If they tell me, oh, I just wanted to try something new, I really don't know what I want to do, those are the ones that honestly most of the time don't even make it through the training period, because we have to let them go because they're not understanding what we do.
So, what are some of the best and worst reasons you've heard for coming to hospice?
um I think best is when they've had a personal loss and they either had an amazing experience with hospice and they want to be able to do that for other families, or they have the opposite experience where they had such a horrible experience where either they weren't getting enough nurses, they weren't educated, and they feel like something was missing in the care that their loved one was receiving, and they want to do something to make it better for somebody else. Those are the ones that, like I said, if their heart and brain are in it in the same kind, in the same circle, most of them bring this on and they're amazing at it. The ones that come in, like I said, I had one probably about a year and a half ago or so. She was in between other jobs. We just happened to be the one that called her up for the job interview, so she took it. And it was simply because it was something different and she was bored. I think she trained for about 4 weeks before we were like, yeah, no, this isn't working. We've got to let you go.
All right. Well, Zoom's telling me we're almost out of time. So, is there anything else you'd like to say before we end this interview?
Well, I want to thank you for doing the interview and not springing some really kind of crazy questions on me, because you know me well enough to expect just about anything as far as an answer. Um, but like I said, no, honestly, I just want to say thank you. I know you're in the hospital. You're getting the care that you need, and whenever you think we're the right service for you, you know I'll be there for you, honey.
Thanks, Michelle. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and most importantly, share the video so we can hashtag spread prune belly awareness. I want to thank Michelle for coming on again, and I'll see you all next week.